Hi, and welcome to Main Street AI, the podcast where traditional businesses are quietly revolutionizing their operations with artificial intelligence and winning. In this podcast, I sit down with industry leaders from law firms and professional services and other Main Street businesses to explore their AI journey. We dive into the opportunities they see, the challenges they're navigating, and the real impact of AI on their industries. Whether you're AI curious or ready to implement, this show brings you insights from leaders who are actually using this technology to serve customers better, empower employees, and drive profitable growth. What happens when the lawyer is also the artist? Marquiel Cade of Cade Mark Law in Denver has been writing rap songs and making beats since he was 10 years old, and that creative background turned out to be the perfect foundation for a law practice built around protecting artists, creators, and brand builders. In this episode, Marquiel talks about the show business problem nobody warns creators about, why AI-generated content is creating brand new legal headaches his clients are bringing to him right now, and how he's built a thriving referral-only practice without running a single ad. He also gets candid about representation, purpose, and what it means to be a beacon in a field where faces like his are far too rare. Let's dive in. Hi, welcome back to the Main Street AI podcast. This is Stephen Whittier with SatoriCoach.io, and I'm joined today by Marquiel Cade of Cade Mark Law. And Marquiel, it's nice to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Stephen.
Great. Just to jump in, please explain a little bit more about what you do, talk about your background, anything, just so people can have a better sense of your expertise.
Yeah, absolutely. So our firm has been open for a few years now. What we do is kind of help artists, creators, anyone that has a brand, and nowadays that's most people, as they venture out into different creative spaces, business executives, people starting businesses, anyone that kind of needs legal help. We try to provide an easy to understand process and kind of help them through their different needs as their business grows and evolves and as they develop brands and wish to protect them. And then sometimes we look out for the little guy. We do some landlord tenant law. Sometimes tenants are in an unfortunate position and need a little bit of help, just getting out of that or having someone represent them in a tough time. So we try to make sure that we are also helping people of low income and people that really kind of need it.
Great. That's a really interesting niche that you have there. And obviously there's a clear demand. As you said, pretty much everybody is trying to create some sort of online brand now. What led you to get into that specific field?
Well, I was a creator first, an artist first. So just to give a little bit more about my background, I've been creating music since I was 10 years old, writing rap songs, making beats, just kind of working in creative spaces. It kind of helped me have an outlet, where outlets weren't always available. I grew up in a kind of single parent household. Mom was at work a lot. So we had to find different ways to stay out of trouble so that she wasn't getting called home from work or having to deal with larger things. So that's, where the kind of the feeling of, getting that creative process out and wanting to help creators started. I didn't know how to protect my songs as a kid. I didn't know how to copyright things or, even trademark certain logos or things that I would use. And I always had an interest in that because I thought, what I was creating was dope. So I was like, hey, how do I, protect this so that I can use it later? And now that's what I get to do for a living. So it's a lot of fun to be able to see both sides of it and understand both sides of it. So as we work with artists and creators, I kind of understand the creative process. I know what goes into those things. And it gives me a little bit more insight to help them rather than just, provide the legal basis for what they need to get done.
For sure. Did the desire to become an attorney come later, or is that something that you had an interest in early on as well?
I think I always knew that I wanted to be a lawyer or a doctor of some sort. So I kind of, muddled the line when I was younger. Like, hey, I did a few internships, at the hospital. I thought maybe I wanted to go into cardiology and deal with those kinds of things. And then I realized, I'm not really one for blood and cutting people open. So I kind of always had an interest in both. But I knew, early on it was either doctor or lawyer. And as I realized that doctor was getting phased out, I was like, okay, lawyer, I like writing. I like, I write novels as well. I like writing and analysis and kind of getting into the nitty gritty. So lawyer just seemed like an easy fit.
Excellent. You know, one of the things I always find as an interesting question is to ask, for people that aren't in the legal field, so they're laymen, they're outsiders. What are things that maybe they misunderstand or underestimate about the type of work that you do? So I want to ask you that, but I think that's a particularly interesting question because even more so, my guess would be, you could correct me, but even more so than an entrepreneur business owner, I think a lot of creators are so removed from the idea about their brand building as being part of a business. They start off as a creator. They really have no sense of the demands or the infrastructure required. So I'm sure you have to do a tremendous amount of education. Often they're coming to you once they're really in need, I'm guessing. But what would you like them to know right ahead of time so that they can be more well informed?
I think that, especially nowadays, I think, and I see it a lot in estate planning and in trademark, but I think a lot of times nowadays people can find, so many different resources online, whether it's a template for a will or insight into just, how to file a, trademark application via YouTube video. So I think a lot of people just assume that it's just, basic paperwork and they don't understand the business aspect of it. I like to tell creators when I'm talking with them, especially artists and people who do things in show business, that there is two sides to that. There's the show part and then there's the business part. And I think a lot of creators and artists and myself, as I started out included, understand the show part of it. We understand how to do our craft better than anyone else, whether we're making music, whether we're writing novels, whether we're doing stand-up comedy, but we don't necessarily understand the business aspect that goes into that, the contracts that are involved, the writers that are associated with that. And nowadays we have so many resources online that people just assume like, oh, that's easy. I can find a YouTube video or I can use this template, not really understanding that there are going to be things sometimes that are missing because they aren't tailored to you and how you do things in your brand and in your craft. So I think I would just want people to know that, and you're correct in that people come to me more times than, when they need it than, at the outset. But I think I would want people to know that it's important to have, someone in your pocket, that understands the law and the business aspect of those things, because it only lends to allowing you to grow, and, benefit, better from your craft.
Right. Yeah. I can imagine there's tremendous value there from having a relationship with someone like you early rather than wait until you're already in some emergency situation so you can structure everything right from the outset. I'll pivot over to our core theme, which is the emerging technology, the AI. Obviously, that's big in the creator space and everywhere in entrepreneurship. So what sort of trends are you seeing in the industry, and or how are you thinking about it and using it yourself?
I think the biggest trends that I'm starting to see, and this could vary depending on the industry people are in, but I see a lot of artists now coming to me with maybe partially AI generated things. And that's okay. I feel like, there are certain avenues and aspects where I think AI can be helpful, and useful. And I'll kind of get to how we use it in just a second. But, I think it's important for artists to understand that, while those tools are helpful in creating things, they shouldn't be a substitute. I see a lot of, Sora and, even, there's, I think Timberland, the artist and producer, he's advocated and created an AI artist that, does their own music and is, not really a person, but, they create songs. So I think it's helpful as a tool, but I think relying on it too much can be a little dangerous to the creative process. And it's also one of those spaces where the law, they take a while to catch up on everything. So they're trying to figure out ways in the law to kind of compensate for the fact that some things may not be 100% generated by a human being. And there was a little bit of help there. And what does that look like? And who owns that? And what, that looks like. So
that's huge right now, right? I don't mean to interrupt, but the whole IP question is massive around that right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And there's so many people that come to me and have questions about that. Hey, my album cover was generated by AI. Can I use it? Or does ChatGPT own this now? Is it something that, can be discoverable? Or, if we were to have a lawsuit and someone said I copied theirs and I didn't know I copied it, I got it from AI. That kind of thing is because AI is using so many different things to generate these images. And sometimes it is other works out there. So, I think it's, important to just, make sure that we're using it more as a tool because you're right. It's something that the law is they're going to do different things and try to find different ways to catch up and compensate for the fact that not everything is being generated by artists anymore. And there is a little bit of help. But, as far as how we use it, I think, we don't typically go into, much of, generation of any legal documents or any kind of analysis via it. I think, having the human connection and me having my hands on whatever that person or business or creator needs I think is most important. And AI won't always take those things into consideration unless you prompt it to. And, if I'm talking with a client or an artist, I may get insight into what they do, but translating that into a way that AI may understand or whatever platform I'm using, may understand is going to be, there's going to be a disconnect. It's like a game of telephone. You go down the line, by the time you get to the end, there's a whole different message being given and provided. So, we don't use it too much. But I do think that it can be helpful again as a tool to, maybe, if someone provides, I've seen, instances where someone's generated an entire will, for example, with AI, and sometimes I'll like look and go, okay, this was generated by AI, and I can see the holes and the gaps there, that AI may not have been, thinking about. Maybe there's a parent who, there's a forgotten guardian clause. If you pass away, who's going to take care of your kids? AI didn't even know you had kids because you didn't tell it before you had it generate something. So, I think it's helpful just more so as a tool, and that's kind of how we use it as a tool, if you will, to, maybe, look at anything we might be missing or, something that may not have been thought of. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's a slippery slope.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different capabilities. I think what we're seeing a lot in the legal domain, which people are still only just starting to wake up to. There's obviously applications for, for lead generation and conversion, although
Yeah.
sometimes the law are almost exclusively referral based, so that's not as much of a need. But really, I think the massive area that we're seeing is on the efficiency side. So it's more the operations side. Clearly, there's ideation and document generation or review and things like that. But I think a lot of it is, where people are not quite aware of like how much it can reduce some of the manual work on the back end. But for sure, it's not a substitute for attorneys doing their attorney thing, right? That's where people go. That's where people go wrong, is when they try and use it as a substitute for their skills and their particular nuanced discernment on legal matters.
Yeah, like reviewing medical records. AI is great. You plug in thousands of pages of medical records, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I know what this complex medical procedure means, and what the doctors are putting in, and how many cc's of this are required." So I've seen instances, and we've used it in instances where document review is definitely helpful, because all you need is to understand what's in the document itself. But you're correct. I mean, that extra analysis and that extra step, that can't be substituted with AI. I think you need an attorney to kind of understand those things. So yeah, you're right. Document review, that's a big one. That saves a lot of time and money for clients, which they love. So
Right. What are you most excited about for, like, what might be coming with some of this technology? Maybe it hasn't quite arrived yet, or it's not quite there yet, but what do you think is maybe on the horizon?
I think, it's exactly what we were just talking about, cutting down some costs and some time for clients. The number one reason, or one of the reasons that I started, my firm, was to kind of not only kind of reduce some legal costs and demystify the legal process for the common person, but also to kind of tackle this notion and go against the notion that all legal things need to be very, very expensive. I think, especially dealing with, the poor artists or the creators, not a lot of them have the extra funds all the time to pay an attorney thousands and thousands of dollars to deal with an issue. So I think this technology is helpful because it can help in some instances cut down the time and the cost that an attorney may need to look at things or to review things or things that maybe would cost more for the client, to cut those costs down. And that's how we tend to approach things that artists need or that businesses or creators needs. Businesses always want to cut costs as well. So it's, across the board, no one wants to spend thousands of dollars on legal fees. And I think that's the exciting thing about this technology, is that things that you used to bill for, hours of document review, just reviewing certain things or creating certain things, can be cut down through the use of the technology.
Absolutely. If we were to, this is purely hypothetical, right? But if we were to go out 5 years, just from your thinking right now, what do you think in your field would look pretty much the same, and what do you think might look radically different?
Well, the one thing that I'm excited about and that I think will be radically different in the next 5 to 10 years is Colorado has started this already, and some states are following suit. But there's the use of paraprofessionals now. So now there are certain tasks and certain things that you don't even need to hire an attorney for. And the cost associated with that has drastically reduced because you're not hiring an attorney, you're hiring a paraprofessional who can take care of that. So I think as an emerging thing, that's something that not only am I excited about, but it's going to make the legal field a lot different. Lawyers are going to be a lot more, kind of at a higher level taking care of things, and specialized and kind of more, in their field, and in the, when they're needed, they're needed. And when it's just a basic issue, or when it's something that you may not need a lawyer for, you'll have the access to a cheaper option that can get the same job done. So I think that's one thing that, will kind of change. One thing that I think will stay the same is attorneys being attorneys. We're very much gatekeepers of our field. So there has been some pushback, to that same point. There has been some pushback from attorneys and different states and state bars on allowing people who haven't been to law school, who haven't passed the bar, to deal with legal issues. And I think lawyers are always going to be at that, kind of, hey, we're an elite level, we're professionals. And I agree with that to some certain extent. We do have to go to schooling and, kind of, have to pass, one of the hardest tests that most people, have heard about. But I think that, because of that, we're going to protect our industry. We're going to have those kinds of people that are locking down, that are against those types of things. And that's one thing that I don't think will ever change. When you have a class of people that have, a grip on something, it's tough to get them to let go sometimes.
Great. So I want to swing back into your practice as it stands right now. What would you say that your firm does extraordinarily well that maybe sets you apart from others in your field?
That's a great question, Stephen. I think we're people oriented first. The larger law firms, and I've worked for them, and I support them, and I have nothing bad to say about my experiences at larger law firms. But I think we get lost in the sauce, for lack of a better term here, when you're at a bigger firm like that, and you lose the concept of the person, of the entity you're working for, and caring for them. So one thing that we strive for at our firm, and I think that makes us different, is that we care about people. And not only do we care about people, we understand people in a way that maybe other firms don't get. I have so many people of color that come to me and go, hey, you're a person of color, and I came to you because you're a person of color, and I need someone who looks like me, who understands what I go through. And I'm sorry, I kind of tear up saying that, because we care. Yeah. And we really want to make sure people are taken care of in those instances. So at our firm, it's people first. It's the client first. It's taking care of whatever that person needs, whatever that business needs. And then we deal with the larger things, hey, this is a firm, we're a business, we have to run, we have to worry about profit and revenue and those types of things. And I think a lot of firms are reverse. It's profit, revenue, how many clients can we bring in? How can we make our, margins larger? And then the client comes. And I think that's something that, maybe the law needs to get back to, is caring about the person that the law affects, and what their needs are and that kind of thing. So that's the one thing that I think sets us apart, and I take pride in it. And I'm sorry, I kind of tear up doing that, because it's it's something that really,
No, I mean,
means,
it shows,
yeah.
it shows your sincerity. Um, and you were a creator too. So you actually, you know, you've been on both sides, right? Which
Yeah.
is a huge advantage as well.
Yeah.
Um, so in terms of the business side, in terms of growth, I know you're a few years in. You said to your own firm, so it's still
Mhm.
relatively early in the journey. But where would you say you're at right now in terms of growth? And then what are you looking at for where you'd like to be in, say, the next 12 months?
Yeah, I think starting out, it was tough. Like we didn't know, how to advertise, who to, advertise to, and how to just get those clients to start coming in the door. And I think sometimes it is like I said, it's a legal gatekeeping thing. People go to attorneys and they go, "Oh, this firm's been open for 20 years," or this lawyer's been handling this matter for 20 years, or these types of matters for X amount of years. So I think the tough part and where we started was just kind of trying to figure out where we fit in the legal industry, where we fit in firms and nationwide who do trademark work, where we fit in Colorado and their firms. And we've experienced significant growth in the last few years. And all of our stuff is referral based. I have so many clients that come to me and go, "Hey, you took care of this person or you took care of this artist, and hey, I want to do work with you too. I really like how you helped them with this. And they said you explained things very clearly and your billing was very easy to understand. And you guys were affordable. I didn't have to, go take out a second mortgage on my home or, sell my car or whatever the case may be." So I think that we've gone from not knowing how to fit in to not only fitting in, but thriving. And I can tell you now, Stephen, I haven't put out an ad or advertised the firm in since we first started, since we first opened. It's been one of those things that people, when you take care of people, they take care of you, and it happens that way. They send people and refer you. So as far as the growth goes, it's all referral based, and it's been significant because you help one person that turns into, they tell 5 people who tell 10 more people who tell 20 more people, and it's led to a boom in clients, so much so that there are times where I'm like, "Man, I have no idea how I'm going to have time to do this today or have time to do that, or I've got this in here," and that kind of thing. So, I really enjoy that. And as far as where we're going to go in the future with growth, I'm kind of one of those people that I'm going to take on as much as I can and be transparent with the clients that I'm working with. So, my goal isn't necessarily to have a million offices that span across the world or even across the U.S. I kind of like to, make sure that I'm involved in the making of the secret sauce, and make sure that
Mhm.
every client that deals with us gets that same experience. And it's a little bit harder to replicate, and kind of do that without, kind of having me as a piece of the puzzle, because I think I'm a key part of what makes our recipe work. So you can't replicate the secret sauce. So I'm kind of one of those people where it's like, hey, we're just going to keep growing and taking on as many clients as we can, but we're not necessarily going to grow too much in scale as far as offices and keep opening and things like that. We'll kind of keep it very close, and I think that helps us do better work for the people that we do serve.
Great. Yeah, I mean, it's been an incredible journey so far. Um, so you've got this great trajectory. Um, Hypothetically, if you could wave a magic wand and fix one thing in the business that might be a bottleneck or a challenge right now, what would that be?
I wish there was another me. That's the one thing. I think we've grown in staff, so I have a lot of assistants, and we have people in our primary office in downtown Denver who can kind of field anything that may come in there, or clients that may come in. But there's only one me, so if a client needs something that's legal that maybe one of our staff can't handle, or they have a question that is kind of tailored to me, I'm only one person. There's only so many hours in the day. There's only so much time. So that's the one thing that if I had a magic wand, I'd like clone myself so that I could deal with a lot more issues and help a lot more people, because sometimes I'm, pulled here and then pulled there, and I don't mind it at all. But if there was another me to field that, we could do twice as much work. And then if I had another magic wand, there'd be 3 of me. And, if only my mom had triplets.
Yeah, that's all. That's actually called the the key man challenge for entrepreneurs. It's one of the core ones. I think a lot of people relate to that. This is fantastic. Where I always like to wrap up is just pulling this around to the personal why.
Yeah.
We've talked about embracing technology. We've talked about growth and everything, but obviously I've got a very strong feeling from you already about you're very purpose driven and people focused. But I'll just ask you, what is it aside from business targets that really gets you motivated to get out of bed every morning and do what you do?
It's the helping people. We've already hit it on the head. I think and I guess to, kind of add some dimension to it, I think the representation as well. I tell people all the time, 5% of lawyers are black. There's not many of them that are in this field. And, if you look at the population of the US, we're at least, I think 13 or 14% of the population is black. So I want to see that number at least represent, the U.S. population and what that looks like. And if we could have 50% of lawyers be black, that'd be great. And what's even crazier is that the number is even smaller when you look at owners of law firms. I can probably count on my hand the number of black law firms in Colorado, and that it would probably take me less than both of my hands to count the number of black owned law firms in the United States. So I think it's important and part of my why is to provide that representation. I want, excuse me, I want someone that looks like me to go, hey, he's a lawyer, he can do it. Like, he understands how to, help creators and businesses, and he makes it so easy to understand and digest. And I want to do law. Like, I can do that. That's not that hard. You take care of people, and you understand some statutes here and there, and you get at writing and analysis and understanding comprehension. So I think part of my why is to be that beacon that I want to see in the industry. I think it goes back to the old maxim and saying of be the change that you want to see in the world, and that's a lot of what helps me get out of bed in the morning. It is the helping people and doing that, but it's also the representation that is involved in that, because I understand that the the blessing that I've been given and the abilities that I've been given shouldn't be taken for granted, and they should be used to help people and show people that you could do this too. It's not that it's not hard. It is challenging for sure. There are different things that you have to deal with on different, occasions. But if even one person looks at me and goes, hey, I want to do that because he looks like me, and usually lawyers don't look like me, that kind of thing. I'm making a difference, and that's part of my why too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Not just your service oriented side, but also that's an aspirational dimension to it as well, which is really cool. And I have no doubt you will be inspiring some people to follow in your footsteps. So just to finish up, Marquiel, how can people reach you that want to find out more about your services?
Oh, we're everywhere, Stephen. We've got to dealing with artists. So we're on Instagram, Cade Mark Law. We're on TikTok, Cade Mark Law. We're on YouTube, Cade Mark Law. We actually have hundreds of videos out. One cool thing, and maybe this is something that we'll talk about offline, but one cool thing that we like to do is anytime I do a TikTok video or YouTube video, I have cool, fun little intros where I've taken a song that you may hear in pop culture. I've changed the lyrics because I write music myself to be legal oriented. So it's like legal songs that are the intros to these videos that, teach you why you should have a will, or what goes into a will, or how to copyright your stuff. What is a copyright? Those types of things, and those informational videos are something that we do. But yeah, we're available everywhere. You can search us we're on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all of those things. Our website, cademarklawpllc.com. Any of those ways are ways that you can reach us or interact with us. And I'm hands-on, so there isn't a social media manager who's kind of taking care of any of these things. It's kind of, if you're messaging us, you're probably going to have me responding directly, just because I like to make sure that I'm keeping an eye on what's happening here.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much. I had a really great time speaking with you, and I think some great value there for creators that are looking for some help getting started. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care.